Hello, my name's Orlane, and my sister destroyed the apartment I spent 10 years working to afford. Then she smiled and said, Mom and Dad will make you forgive me. And they did. They told me, it's just an apartment. But to me, it was the only place where I ever felt like I mattered. She threw a party in my home, pretended it was hers online, and when I asked for accountability, I was the one blamed for dividing the family. They took my name, my voice, my truth, and wore it like a costume. But what happens when the invisible one stops staying quiet? What happens when the quiet one decides to document everything? Would they still call it just an apartment? If it cost them their reputation, their job, their power? Want to know how I made them remember who I am? Let me tell you exactly what happened. Let me show you what family really looks like. When you're the one they always erase. I still remember the sound of the key turning in the lock that first morning. It was mine, not a landlord's, not a boyfriend's, not a roommate's, mine. The brass felt heavier in my palm than I expected, like the weight of years stacked on top of each other, shifts at the clinic that bled into nights at the grocery store, eating peanut butter sandwiches in my car because the break room was too crowded, driving an old Civic that coughed up blue smoke every winter. All those little humiliations had led me to this moment. My first mortgage. My first real home. The apartment wasn't big, a one-bedroom in East Austin with scuffed hardwood floors and windows that stuck when the humidity rose, but I loved it. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. In the kitchen, the countertops I'd chosen, slate gray quartz, glimmered faintly under the light. In the living room, a thrifted couch with a colorful throw draped across it waited for me. I walked barefoot from room to room, touching the walls like they were old friends. For the first time, I could exist without asking for permission. I leaned against the windowsill, staring down at the coffee shop across the street where college kids sat with laptops. This space will finally be where I exist, I whispered to myself. Not the reliable one in the family who picked up slack, not the background character in my sister's endless dramas, just me. That evening, while unpacking boxes, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name that always made my stomach tighten, Seraphine. My sister was 3 years older, always perfectly polished, always managing to look like a movie star even in sweatpants. Growing up, she'd been the center of every family photo, every story at dinner, every whispered, "She's so special" from our parents. I answered anyway. Hey! Her voice was all sunshine and honey. Mom told me about your new place. That's amazing, Oh. Listen, I've been meaning to come by and help you organize. You're working this weekend, right? I hesitated. She didn't ask. She announced, Yeah, I have a conference in Dallas. I'll be back Monday, I said slowly. Perfect, she chirped. I'll swing by, get your kitchen in order, maybe even hang some art. You know how hopeless you are with walls, she laughed. I managed a weak chuckle. Seraphine, you don't need to. It's no trouble, she cut me off. Family helps family. Her words landed oddly. I wanted to believe her. Some part of me still hoped we could be close, that she'd see me as more than the responsible sister. Okay, I said at last. Just, please be careful with my stuff. I saved a long time for this. Of course, silly, she sang. Trust me. When I hung up, I stood in the quiet kitchen, staring at the countertop. A tiny seed of unease took root under my ribs, but I pushed it down. That weekend, I worked 3 12-hour days in Dallas, living on bad coffee and hotel muffins. Sunday night, I scrolled through my phone before falling asleep. Seraphine hadn't texted. No photos of her hanging art, no playful updates. I told myself she was just busy. Monday morning, I drove the 3 hours back to Austin, the sun already fierce over the highway. By the time I reached my street, sweat clung to my back. I parked, climbed the stairs with my suitcase, and pushed the key into the lock. The door resisted slightly, as if the air inside had changed. I opened it and froze. Wine-stained carpet, shards of glass glittering like frost on the kitchen floor. My couch sagging under the weight of dark rings where drinks had been set down without coasters. The quartz countertop had a black burn mark, deep and ugly. The smell of stale beer and perfume clung to everything. On the counter, a note scribbled on a piece of notebook paper. Sorry, party got wild? S. My stomach went hollow. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the sound of something breaking quietly inside me, like a thread pulled until it snapped. I walked slowly through the apartment. My bedroom closet door hung crooked. The lamp I'd bought at a yard sale was tipped over, its shade dented. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the note. My fingers shook, but not from rage, from disbelief. My sanctuary, the milestone I'd scraped and clawed for, had been turned into a backdrop for one of Seraphine's endless parties. I picked up the lamp, set it upright, then sat back down. The clock on my nightstand read 4:17 p.m. Outside, kids were laughing on their skateboards, a sound that felt like it came from another planet. I reached for my phone, then stopped. I could already hear what my parents would say. It's just an apartment, honey. Don't hold a grudge. Family's more important. They'd say she was young, she'd made a mistake. They'd tell me to get over it. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I went to the kitchen and began wiping the countertop, focusing on one clean square inch at a time. My hands moved mechanically, like I was scrubbing my own thoughts. Underneath the smell of beer, I could still faintly smell the paint I'd chosen, the dream I'd built. I whispered to the empty room. They're going to tell me to get over it. My voice sounded small but steady. It's just an apartment. I kept cleaning until the sun dipped low and the windows turned gold. My phone buzzed once, Seraphine's name again, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I placed it face down on the counter, watching the screen go dark. In that silence, a decision began to form, not yet words, but something heavier and sharper than before. The next morning, sunlight leaked through my blinds, painting pale stripes across the floor. I hadn't slept well. My body felt heavy, my head buzzing like a muted alarm. I reached for my phone almost without thinking, needing a distraction. The screen blinked awake, and there it was. An Instagram story at the top of my feed. Seraphine's perfect smile filled the frame, a wine glass tilted elegantly in her hand. Behind her, unmistakable, was my rug, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy, faded teal with a pattern I'd fallen in love with at a flea market. The caption, "First weekend in my dream apartment." Dozens of likes, a few hearts, a flood of emojis from her friends, but my eyes caught on a comment that burned more than anything else. "You deserve it, honey. Mom." My thumb hovered over the screen. I wanted to write something, anything. "That's not yours," or "How dare you?" But I couldn't. My hands trembled slightly. I set the phone face down on the table. The coffee I'd poured minutes ago went cold. It wasn't just that she'd thrown a party. It wasn't just the mess. It was that she'd stolen the story of my life, turned my hard work into her backdrop, and my mother had applauded. That cut deeper than the burn mark on my counter ever could. By mid-morning, my phone rang. Mom's name. I let it buzz twice before answering. Her voice was soft, like she was calling from a church pew. "Sweetheart, have you eaten? You sound tired." "I'm fine," I said, though my voice was clipped. "Your sister told me you're upset about the apartment. Why don't you come by the house this afternoon? We'll have some lunch, talk things out like family." I pressed my fingers to my temple. "Talk things out?" "She wrecked my place, Mom. And now she's online pretending it's hers." There was a pause. Honey, maybe you're seeing this too harshly. Sometimes things get out of hand. It's just an apartment, and Seraphine—" I cut her off quietly. "I'll come by later." The call ended. The quiet after her voice felt heavier than noise. I cleaned up what I could in the kitchen, moving slowly, like my body was underwater. By early afternoon, I locked the door behind me and drove north to the neighborhood where we grew up. The drive took 40 minutes. Suburban houses with trimmed lawns and American flags slid past my window. My father's pickup was in the driveway when I pulled up. The familiar creak of the front door hit me like an echo from childhood. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and roast chicken. Seraphine was already there, perched on the edge of the sofa like a queen in exile, scrolling on her phone. She looked up when I entered, her expression neutral, but her lips curved faintly. Hey, sis, she said, like nothing had happened. Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Sweetheart, thank you for coming. Let's sit down. We gathered in the living room. Dad, Corbin, sat in his recliner, quiet as always, eyes flicking between us like a referee who didn't want to blow the whistle. Mom began, voice rehearsed. We've always been close. Things break sometimes. But let's not let this break us. Seraphine set her phone down and leaned back. It's just a place, oh. You're overreacting. Mom and Dad agree. Her tone had that edge of amusement that always made me feel small, like I was a child sulking over a toy. I stared at her, then at my parents. Dad shifted but said nothing. Mom's hands folded in her lap. The air in the room felt thick, like it was full of unsaid sentences. Inside, something in me cracked, not loudly, but like ice splitting on a frozen lake. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw the evidence in their faces, the photos, the note. Instead, I sat perfectly still, my fingers gripping my knees. Mom tried again, voice soft. She's your sister. She didn't mean harm. Don't hold on to anger. Family is all we have. I turned my gaze to the window, watching sunlight bounce off the birdbath outside. My voice, when it came, was flat. Maybe family isn't what I thought it was. No one replied. The silence stretched. Seraphine picked up her phone again, smirking faintly at something on the screen. After a few minutes, I stood. Thank you for lunch, I said, though I hadn't eaten. I walked toward the door. Mom's voice followed me, soft but edged with guilt. Don't do anything you'll regret, sweetheart. I didn't answer. Outside, the late afternoon sun was blinding. I slid into my car, closed the door, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. For the first time, the thought formed clearly. They see her. They don't see me. Maybe they never did. This wasn't about a couch, or a stain, or even an apartment. It was about my place in this family, and how easily it was erased. I started the engine and drove back to my apartment, the radio off, the hum of the tires, a steady drumbeat under my thoughts. That night, I didn't unpack or clean. I just sat on the floor, staring at the blank wall, the glow from the streetlight seeping through the blinds. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, the glow from the streetlight cutting through my blinds. By the time dawn touched the windows, my body felt like it had been filled with lead. I got up slowly, padded into the kitchen, and poured coffee into a chipped mug. It tasted burnt, but I drank it anyway. The apartment was quiet now, scrubbed mostly clean, but it felt like a stranger's place. At 8:30, I opened my laptop to switch the internet plan into my own name. I wanted something small, something I could control. The call connected, a cheerful voice on the other end. Thanks for calling. How can I help you today? I just moved into a new apartment, I said. I need to update the account and billing. There was a pause as she typed. That's funny, she said. We already have an active account at that address, under a Seraphine Latimer. Is that you? My stomach went cold. No, that's my sister. Another pause. Well, she's listed as the account holder. All the utilities are under her name. I can't make changes without her approval. I ended the call politely, my voice wooden, my heart thudded against my ribs. After a moment, I dialed the water department. Same answer. Trash service. Same. Every utility I'd opened when I signed my mortgage had been shifted into her name somehow. I sat at the table, staring at my phone. The mug of coffee trembled slightly in my hand. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. She'd used my address, my purchase, my identity, and wrapped it around herself like a coat. For a minute, I imagined calling my parents, telling them every detail. But the image of our last conversation floated back. The way Mom looked past me at Seraphine, the way Dad stayed silent. My thumb hovered over the contact, then fell. They wouldn't listen. They never had. Instead, I opened a new note on my laptop and began typing. Dates. Screenshots. Account numbers. My own little ledger of violations. The clicking of the keys was steady, almost soothing, like stitching a wound closed. Hours passed like that. By late afternoon, the sky turned orange outside. I stood to stretch, my body stiff, and began clearing the cutlery drawer I hadn't touched since moving in. At the back, under a tangle of paper clips and rubber bands, my fingers brushed something stiff. I pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. It was handwritten in looping script. This place saved me during the hardest years of my life. I hope it becomes your safe haven too. No name, just that. I sat back on my heels, the letter trembling slightly in my fingers. A stranger, someone I'd never met, understood the value of this apartment more than my own family. The words landed like a soft hand on my shoulder. I pressed the paper flat on the table, smoothing the creases. In the quiet, something shifted inside me. A realization, slow and steady, like a tide coming in. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't about a party, or a rug, or even a stack of bills. It was a pattern, a story I'd been living in without naming it. I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty room. You can steal my name, but not my voice. My breath came out shaky but strong. Then I deleted every draft message to my family. All the explanations, all the pleas. Gone. I opened a blank document, typed the word evidence at the top, and stared at it for a long moment. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. This was the first time in my life I'd chosen silence not as surrender, but as preparation. Outside, the streetlight flickered on. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. My phone buzzed on the counter. Seraphine's name again, but I didn't pick up. I saved the document, closed the laptop, and sat quietly, the stranger's letter under my palm like a talisman. By the time Saturday rolled around, the apartment had stopped feeling like a home and started feeling more like a waiting room. Quiet, airless, like something was coming, but I couldn't name it yet. I was in the middle of folding laundry, mindless, repetitive, when the knock came at the door. Not loud, just 3 soft raps. I figured it was the package guy again, leaving boxes for the unit next door. But when I opened it, I was greeted with an all-too-familiar face I hadn't expected. Hey! The girl was smiling brightly, holding her phone in one hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a headband. I didn't know her name, but I knew her vibe, loud, carefree, and clueless. I think I left my charger here, after the housewarming? Housewarming. I didn't move. My hand stayed on the doorknob. She leaned slightly, eyes drifting past me into the apartment. This is such a vibe. Like, seriously, your sister has the best taste. I love what she did with the plants by the window. So cozy. She thought this was Seraphine's apartment. She thought I was the one visiting. I didn't correct her. I didn't move. Just stood there, letting the silence stretch until she awkwardly chuckled and added, "Is it okay if I just grab it real quick?" Still, I didn't speak. Her smile faltered, and she looked down at her phone. You know what? Never mind. I'll text S. No biggie. She backed away quickly, and I closed the door as soon as she turned. The latch clicked, a sound sharper than usual in the quiet. I leaned against the wood and let out a breath that had been trapped in my lungs the entire conversation. She thought this was Seraphine's place, not mine. That was the story being told. And no one, not even the people in my own building, knew the truth. Later that night, I ordered takeout, lit a candle, and tried to pretend things were normal. I needed noise, something to drown out the echo of that girl's voice. I flipped on the TV, muted it halfway through the commercial, and reached for my phone. I had 4 notifications. None from Seraphine. One from my coworker, Erica. The message was simple. Is this you? It was a link to TikTok. I clicked. The video opened with music already blasting, some viral dance track. The camera panned across my living room, filled with people I didn't know. My couch, my thrifted coffee table, even my bookshelf with the spines of books I'd collected since college, all caught on screen. Wine glasses clinked. Someone danced on the rug I'd picked out from that little shop on South Congress. The caption read, "She let us go wild, girl's a legend, party of the year." 30,000 views, 800 comments. I stared, numb, until the frame shifted, and there it was, My bedroom, my bed, the framed photo on my nightstand with my dog Max from years ago. My memory turned into someone else's set dressing. My body went cold. Not from rage, at least not yet, but from something heavier, a kind of hollow, slow-moving grief that filled my chest. It wasn't just violation, it was humiliation, and it was public. I didn't respond to Erica. I didn't respond to anyone. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop in front of me, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed out a comment, deleted it, wrote a message to Seraphine, deleted that too. What would I even say? They were laughing at a graveyard and calling it a stage. Every piece of furniture, every color I'd chosen, every little corner I'd made mine, it had been turned into content, a backdrop for someone else's fun. I wasn't a sister. I was a location tag. Hours passed. I watched the video again. I zoomed in on the faces. One girl spilled wine over the rug and laughed. Another guy lifted a throw pillow to fan himself. They had no idea, no sense that the place they trashed meant anything. At midnight, I opened the voice memo app on my phone. For once, I didn't plan. I just hit record. My name is Orlane, I said, voice quiet. I live in apartment 2B. I bought it with my own money. Every part of this place, every chair, every fork in that drawer, I paid for it. I cleaned it. I saved for it. And my sister used it like a playground. I paused. The room was so quiet, I could hear my own breath. This isn't the first time she's done something like this, but it's the first time she didn't even try to hide it. She's proud of it. And my parents, Mom and Dad, they think I'm overreacting. They say it's just a place. I swallowed, but kept speaking. This is theft. This is abuse. This is not family. I stopped the recording. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I saved the file, labeled it Day 1, and closed the app. Then I sat in the dark, the glow from the streetlight outside painting a pale line across the floor again, just like it had the night before. But this time, I wasn't staring at the ceiling. I was staring at the truth. Sunday afternoons had always carried a weird stillness, like the world was holding its breath before the next week began. That particular Sunday, it felt like the pause before a storm. Mom called me again around noon. Her voice was wrapped in that carefully calibrated softness she used whenever she wanted something to sound like it came from love, not control. We'd really like to see you today, sweetheart. Just a short visit. Your dad made his roast. No one's mad. We just want to talk. I knew the language. I recognized the trap. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe a final thread of hope, made me agree. I showered, got dressed, and packed nothing. I wasn't staying long. When I pulled up to the house, Seraphine's car wasn't in the driveway. That alone told me this wasn't about peace. This was about silencing conflict. She didn't have to be there. She already won. Inside, the air smelled like pot roast and lemon cleaner, same as always. 100 Sundays lived in those smells. I stepped into the kitchen. Mom turned from the sink, drying her hands on a floral dish towel. She smiled. I'm so glad you came. Let's sit. We moved to the dining table, my father already seated at the head, flipping through a magazine like none of this mattered. Mom placed an envelope on the table between us, carefully. This, she said, pushing it toward me, should cover what was damaged. Let's just move forward. Holding on to anger isn't good for anyone. I didn't touch the envelope. I didn't even look down at it. Instead, I asked, how much is in there? 2,000, she said, like she was proud of that number. It should be more than enough for the rug, some cleaning, a new lamp, maybe even repaint the counter. I exhaled slowly, then slid the envelope back across the table with one finger. Money isn't the currency I was robbed of, I said. Dad looked up for the first time. His expression wasn't shocked, just tired, or maybe annoyed. Honey, it was a party. She made a mistake. Your daughter committed identity fraud, I said. Calmly, quietly. She transferred my utility bills into her name. She told strangers she lived in my home. She hosted a party that went viral with my personal belongings in the background, my bedroom, my photographs. Mom's lips tightened. She didn't mean harm. Intent doesn't undo destruction. That silenced the room. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Then Mom said, her voice still soft, "We don't want to see you girls drift apart. You've always been different, but you're still sisters." That word, sisters, landed like a stone in my chest. I stood up. I didn't drift. I was pushed. Neither of them spoke as I walked to the door. But just before I reached it, Dad said behind me, "Don't do anything you can't take back." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "I'm not the one who crossed the line," I said. That evening, back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and sat at the kitchen table, the one with the edge still slightly scorched from Seraphine's party. I clicked open the folder I'd started, screenshots of utility account changes, stills from the viral video, comments from her social pages where she boasted about her space. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. But something nudged me to answer. "Orlane?" The voice was male, familiar. "This is Evander, from UT. We had American Lit together?" I blinked. Evander. I hadn't heard that name in 10 years. "Hey," I said cautiously. "I saw the video," he continued. "I didn't want to believe it was you until I saw the apartment. That rug, the one with the blue diamonds. You always talked about getting it someday." I laughed, quietly. "Yeah, took me 4 years." He hesitated. "Are you okay?" There was something in his voice that wasn't pity. It was steadiness, grounded concern, the kind that didn't rush to fix, but just stayed present. "I'm getting there," I said. He didn't offer the usual condolences, didn't say family's complicated, or give it time. Instead, he asked the one question that no one else had. "Do you want to just vent, or do you want to do something about it?" The line went quiet for a moment, then I said, "Both." We talked for another 20 minutes. I explained what happened, what was documented, how the fallout had been private and public. He listened like someone who actually believed me. "I'm not a criminal lawyer," he said finally, "but I know civil law. If you want to talk options, I can walk you through them." "I do." After the call, I sent him the evidence folder, everything I had. My final message in the email read, "Let me know if this is enough to get started. If not, I'll find more." The day after I promised myself I wouldn't whisper anymore, not in rooms where I had every right to speak, not in spaces where silence was mistaken for consent, I woke up to a notification that rattled more than just my phone. It was early, still dark outside, the kind of hour when the world is hushed and half asleep, when thoughts run louder than traffic. A faint blue light crept through the blinds, casting the room in a kind of soft tension. My phone vibrated once against the nightstand. A low hum. Urgent. Like it had something to confess. I blinked myself awake and reached for it with a sense of dread already blooming in my chest. The message came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a mutual acquaintance from college. We hadn't exchanged more than holiday likes and birthday reactions in over a decade. "Have you seen this?" A short question, a single link underneath. I tapped it, thumb hesitant but curious. The browser opened slowly, my heartbeat louder than the loading bar. LinkedIn. Of course. And there she was again. Seraphine, front and center in a carousel of photos. And not just any photos, photos taken in my apartment. The breath caught in my throat before I could even process why. Each frame was curated like a magazine spread. The newly finished marble countertop in the kitchen gleamed under warm lighting. The mid-century armchair I'd spent months hunting down at vintage stores sat perfectly posed beside the window. Even the delicate potted plant in my bedroom, the one I'd nursed through 3 winters, appeared like an accessory, like hers. Her caption read, "Latest interior project, proud to have designed this space top to bottom, turning dreams into reality, one home at a time." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, other designers congratulating her, Strangers tagging her with praise and opportunities. Collaborations. Praise. Adoration. I stared at it for a long moment, not moving, not blinking, not even shocked anymore, because it wasn't the first time, not even close. But something about this calculated performance of someone else's life, my life, was different. It was surgical, intentional. A theft not just of things, but of narrative. She had crossed another line, and this time, there would be no pretending it didn't exist. I didn't cry. There were no tears left for her. What settled inside me wasn't sadness. It was something colder, clearer. A kind of internal stillness I hadn't felt in years. I got up, wrapped myself in a sweater, and made coffee in the same kitchen she'd claimed as hers. The mug felt heavier than usual in my hands. I stared around my space, and whispered to the silence, "They think you're a legend, but I know exactly what you are." By late morning, I found myself sitting at a small coffee shop just 2 blocks from my apartment. Evander had chosen it, a tucked-away place that always smelled of cinnamon and espresso and anonymity. The kind of place where no one asked questions if you stayed for hours and ordered only one drink. He was already there when I arrived, seated near the back, his laptop open, glasses low on his nose, scanning emails with quiet focus. When he saw me, he stood and gave me a nod. Not pity, not concern, respect. The kind people give you when they know you've already done the hard part. "You brought it?" he asked gently. I handed him a USB drive and a thick manila folder. Inside was everything I'd collected. Screenshots, video footage, lease agreements, utility bills, photos with timestamps, social media comparisons, receipts. My life turned into evidence. He flipped through slowly, nodding as he went. "You've already done half my job." I let out a laugh that surprised me. I didn't know what else to do with all the rage. Evander looked up and met my eyes. "You did exactly what you should. You built a record. Now we use it." And we did. For the next 2 hours, we sat side by side, poring over documents, mapping out options, civil claims, cease and desist letters, unauthorized use, fraudulent representation. He explained the logistics, the legal routes, the real-world implications. It wasn't glamorous. It was methodical, even mundane. But underneath the paperwork, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power, ownership, control. At one point, Evander leaned back and said, "You're not reacting anymore. You're leading." I blinked. "It feels strange." He smiled faintly. "It feels right." By the time the sun had begun to lower behind the buildings, we had drafted the letter. Official, stern, without emotion or embellishment. A cease and desist on his firm's letterhead. It didn't scream. It didn't need to. The facts were enough. We reviewed it together at the corner table. My handwritten notes lined the margins, every item she'd stolen, every detail she'd claimed as hers, each note a quiet reclaiming of something I wasn't willing to let go of anymore. "This isn't revenge," I said, voice low. "This is repair. She didn't just take things. She broke reality. She broke trust." Evander closed the folder and nodded. "Then let's fix it." I walked home as twilight stretched across the street, the sidewalks bathed in amber. Every step forward felt heavier with what I had decided to do, but lighter with knowing I wasn't doing it alone. Back in the apartment, I opened the window just slightly, let in the evening air. I wrapped myself in a soft blanket, sat down at my desk, and hit record on my phone. "This is my line in the sand," I said into the quiet. "No more whispering, no more protecting people who refuse to protect me. No more letting them name my reality while they erase me from it. This is mine now." Then I opened my laptop, attached the letter to an email, and hit send. To Seraphine, CC'd to my parents, her design collaborators, every client she had ever name-dropped in my presence, every person who had praised her for the lies she'd built on my foundation. When it was done, I removed her from every digital thread of my life, deleted her number, blocked her on every platform, not out of vengeance, but because I deserved peace. I stared at the blank screen where her name used to live. There was no trembling in my fingers, no racing heart, just stillness. I breathed in deep, let it out slow. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to take up space. The email had barely cooled in her inbox before she went public. 2 days after I sent the cease and desist letter, Seraphine posted a long, syrupy update on Facebook. No mention of me by name, of course. She always knew how to veil the knife with silk. The first line read, "Family should forgive. I never thought I'd be sued by my own blood." Underneath, there was a carefully curated photo of us from 5 years ago, me with a forced smile at Thanksgiving, her leaning into me like we were sisters in a Hallmark movie. She wrote about betrayal, about pain, about being the bigger person, about always giving, always loving, and still being punished. Thousands of reactions, hundreds of comments. "I can't believe she'd do that to you. You've always been the heart of your family. Blood should be thicker than this." The narrative was clear. I was now the villain, the ungrateful little sister who'd taken her sister to court over, what? A misunderstanding? A couch? I didn't comment. I didn't respond, but I felt the shift. Private messages began to pour in, a few asking what happened, some accusing me outright, others just silent screenshots from mutual acquaintances. She wanted to spin her shame into a spectacle. I wouldn't play that game. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. "Mom." This time, I answered. "Hi," I said flatly. She didn't bother easing into it. "We need to talk. Your father and I are very concerned." "I'm sure." "Can you come over? This can't keep escalating. There are consequences." I stared at my laptop screen, my name, my accounts, my photos, all open in browser tabs. Evidence. Facts. "I'll come by," I said. "But I'm not walking into a lecture. We just want to talk, as a family." It was always as a family when they needed something from me. That evening, I drove back to the house I grew up in, windows rolled down, the warm air of early fall slipping across my face like a warning. Inside, nothing had changed. Same photos on the walls, same scent of polished wood and lavender. Dad sat at the kitchen table, flipping through bills. Mom poured tea into her favorite floral mugs. They didn't hug me, just motioned to a seat. "We're worried," Mom began. "This is getting out of hand. People are talking. Church friends are asking questions." Dad cleared his throat. "If you go through with this, you'll tear the family apart." I blinked at him. "The family's already torn. I'm just the one who stopped pretending it isn't." Mom's voice softened. "Just imagine what people will think." "I'm not doing this for people, Mom. I'm doing it because I matter too." "You do matter," she insisted, hand fluttering to her chest like I'd wounded her. "Then act like it." Silence stretched across the room. Finally, Dad said, "She didn't mean harm. It was just a mistake. She used my name, my identity. She claimed my home, publicly. That's not a mistake. That's theft." They didn't respond. I stood. "Thanks for the tea." I walked out before the conversation could drag me back into silence. That night, I got home just after 9. The porch light was on, casting a familiar glow across the front door. I stepped inside, kicked off my shoes, and immediately noticed the envelope taped to my door from the inside. Formal notice. Lease termination. I opened it slowly. "Due to multiple community complaints and violations, your lease will not be renewed at the end of the current term." My chest went tight. I read the letter again, slower this time. Then again. It felt like the air was being pulled out of the room. I called the property management number listed on the letter, phone to my ear with one hand, flipping open my laptop with the other. I started recording the call the moment someone answered. "Hi, yes, I just received a termination notice for Unit 2B. Can I ask what this is regarding?" There was a pause on the other end. "Looks like it's due to multiple reported violations, mostly relating to noise complaints and misuse of the space." My heart pounded. There was a party, but it wasn't mine. Well, the complaints were tied to that unit, and we received video footage submitted anonymously. I closed my eyes. Of course she had weaponized the very thing she created. "Can I get a copy of the footage?" I asked. "We don't usually release that unless requested by legal counsel." "I'll be requesting it." After I hung up, I just stood there for a moment, gripping the edge of the counter. First, she stole my home by pretending it was hers. Now she was trying to have it taken from me for real. She wasn't trying to fight fair. She was trying to erase me completely. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it had happened too many times. This was no longer shock. This was routine. I sat down on the empty living room floor, the same floor she and her friends had danced across like it was a stage, and then I said it out loud. "You're not taking this from me. Not this." I pulled my laptop close, opened a new email, and typed the subject line. Formal dispute, lease termination notice. 3 days after I formally disputed the lease termination, after I sent certified letters, filed the report, and refused to be steamrolled into silence, my mother called and invited me to dinner. She didn't say the word sorry, not once. Instead, her voice was breezy, controlled. She said, "We're all going to be here Sunday. You should come. It's time we move on. Time we move on." Not she apologizes. Not they acknowledge. Just we, like this was some mutual misunderstanding we all shared equal blame in, like identity theft and betrayal could be wrapped up in a warm Sunday roast and forced small talk. I knew better than to believe it was a peace offering. This wasn't about healing or accountability. It was about optics, control, about pulling me back into the fold before the story got too far beyond their reach, before the damage to the family name, or Seraphine's sparkling LinkedIn brand, became irreversible. Still, I went. Not for them. Not for any sense of familial duty. I went because I had something they needed to see, something they wouldn't believe unless it was placed directly in front of them. A truth they'd spent years avoiding, minimizing, or explaining away with platitudes. That Sunday, the sun was slipping behind the rooftops when I pulled into my parents' driveway. The porch light flicked on automatically, just like it had since I was a kid. That moment, that tiny flicker of familiarity, could have disarmed me once, but not now. I sat in the car for a while, engine off, hand resting on the thick manila envelope on the passenger seat. It was heavier than paper should feel, heavier because it carried everything they said didn't matter, everything they refused to see. Inside the house, the table was already set, polished silverware, wine glasses rimmed with condensation, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. A roast sat carved on a serving platter, surrounded by the kinds of sides that had once signaled comfort. Herbed potatoes, roasted carrots, gravy in the fancy boat we only brought out for holidays. Merelda, ever the conductor of our forced symphonies, was at the counter arranging rolls into a basket lined with linen. Seraphine was already seated at the table, scrolling through her phone. The corner of her mouth curled upward, not in greeting, but in anticipation. That smug, patient smirk she wore like armor whenever she expected to win. She didn't say hi. I didn't sit down. I walked to the head of the table and placed the envelope in front of her. She blinked. "What's this?" Her voice was light but laced with amusement, like she assumed it was some dramatic gesture for attention. Merelda turned from the sink, wiping her hands. "Orlane?" she asked, more warning than inquiry. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. "It's just a car, right?" I said evenly. "Or a couch, or an apartment. Let's just call it paperwork." Seraphine scoffed, but opened the envelope anyway, all theater, still believing none of this would touch her. And then her expression changed. She stopped flipping through the pages when she saw the complaint, the notarized letters, the screenshots, the timeline, the printed email threads with the leasing office, the financial breakdown outlining legal costs and emotional distress. It was all there. Every lie. Every receipt. Every inch of the damage. Corbin, always the peacemaker and occasional enabler, leaned forward. "Is this a joke?" "No," I said. "It's a boundary. One that got crossed. This is me enforcing it." Merelda took a step forward. "This is cruel," she said sharply. "You're tearing your sister apart over a thing." I turned to her, exhaustion seeping into every syllable. No one in this room took me seriously. No one protected me. So now someone else will. Seraphine pushed back from the table and stood. She didn't crumple the papers, didn't shout. She just stuffed everything back into the envelope with a tight jaw and said, You think this fixes anything? You've always been the bitter one, always jealous. And you've always been the thief, I said, steady as a stone. She stormed out, heels clacking down the hallway, and slammed the front door so hard the family photos rattled on the wall. Merelda glared at me, her voice low but sharp. This could have stayed in the family. I met her gaze. That's the problem. Everything stays in the family. Every lie, every hurt, every betrayal, locked away and buried for the sake of appearances. I'm done bleeding in private just so you can all stay comfortable. I didn't stay for dinner. I walked out and didn't look back. 2 days later, I got a message from an old high school friend. Did you see Seraphine's update? I hadn't. I opened her social profiles. Everything was gone. No birthday brunches, no design inspo posts, no big wins or curated #career goals. Her bio was blank, her feed wiped clean. Then came the forwarded screenshot from LinkedIn. We have chosen to rescind our offer to Ms. Seraphine Latimer, following a review of behavior conflicting with company values. We remain committed to maintaining ethical integrity in all hires. It was public, unmistakable. Final. She had charmed and talked her way out of consequences her whole life. But not this. Not with official records. Not with video evidence. Not with formal complaints and legal action in motion. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post some cryptic quote or pop open a bottle of wine. That night, I wrapped myself in a blanket, stepped out onto the balcony, and sat with the quiet hum of the city below me. The air was cool, just barely brushing against my skin. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing peace. I had made it, and that was enough. I got home late that Friday evening, the kind of dusk where the sky looked like it had been brushed with watercolors, orange bleeding into purple, fading into the indigo of oncoming night. The city lights were just flickering on, casting warm glows across sidewalks slick from an earlier drizzle. The apartment smelled faintly of fresh paint. The corner I'd finished restoring last weekend was still drying, a patch of pale gray over what used to be wine splatter and cigarette burns. The mess was long gone now. That small square of wall, with its smooth, even coat, felt like a tiny triumph. No one else would notice it, but to me, it was everything. Quiet. Mine. I tossed my keys onto the counter, slipped off my shoes, and rubbed the back of my neck. My body ached in a way that only emotional fatigue could bring. It wasn't exhaustion. It was the kind of heaviness that came from standing up for yourself when your legs were still shaking. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and hit the voicemail button on my phone. The machine clicked. There was just one message. My mother's voice filled the room. Soft, hesitant, frayed at the edges like the hem of a dress worn too long. She's crying, she said. She said she has no one left. Not even us. She's lost everything. A pause. Long enough that I could hear her breath hitch, the sound of her trying to hold herself together. Can you at least call her? Just call her, Orlane. Please. And then, silence. Followed by the machine's cold click. I stood still, phone in hand, staring at the blank wall opposite me. I didn't speak. I didn't move. There was no cinematic breakdown, no shattering glass, no whispered sobs. The air wasn't heavy with guilt. It was thick with recognition. Recognition that something had finally been acknowledged. Not in time to repair it, just in time to document the wreckage. I didn't call back. I sat at the edge of my couch, my hands folded gently in my lap. My eyes blurred for a moment, but I didn't cry. I was long past tears. There was no rage in my chest, no bitterness in my gut, only a thought that settled like dust. She's not the only one who lost everything. She just noticed later. Another notification buzzed on my phone. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Some were still defending Seraphine online, strangers clinging to a false narrative that no longer moved me. Others applauded my strength in standing firm, but I wasn't chasing applause. And the not anymore? I placed the phone face down on the coffee table. It didn't belong in this moment. I walked into the kitchen, struck a match, and lit a single candle. A small flicker in the center of a clean counter. No chaos, no clutter, no wine glasses left from uninvited guests, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint scent of drying paint. I poured another glass of water. I picked up the paintbrush I'd left soaking in a jar earlier that week and ran it gently across the wall. The bristles moved with a whisper, shh, shh, soft like a page being turned. Stroke by stroke, I covered the past, not to forget it, to prove that I could. That patch of wall had become something else entirely, not a scar, but a seam, where damage met repair, where memory met renewal. It wasn't about fixing what had been broken, it was about deciding what stayed. I moved from room to room that night, tidying, folding laundry, dusting corners no one else would see, each action deliberate, unhurried. Not to busy myself, to reclaim. Every small task was an act of affirmation. This is my space, my rules, my timeline. There were no echoes of family fights, no strangers laughing in my kitchen, no smirks from across the room, no secrets caught on someone else's camera, just me, just the sound of my breath and the whisper of clean fabric in my hands. Later that night, I found myself at my desk, staring at the voice memo app I had used for months. It had started as a habit, a way to say the things I couldn't share with anyone else. The last recording on the list was from a cold night in January. I tapped it. "You're allowed to exist," my own voice whispered, "even if they pretend you don't." The voice was quiet, shaking slightly, but even now it felt like a letter from a younger version of me, tired, unheard, but determined. I listened to it all the way through. Then I smiled, not because I needed the words anymore, but because I had once needed them so much. And then, gently, I deleted it. I walked to the balcony and opened the door. The Austin night air wrapped around me, warm with a breeze, the scent of mesquite smoke drifting from a neighbor's grill. The city buzzed in the distance, but it wasn't loud. It wasn't intrusive. It was clear, like the static had been lifted from a long, crackling signal. I leaned against the railing, taking it all in. The streetlights, the rhythm of traffic, the rustle of trees. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I was just here. No part of me ached for their apology anymore. I didn't need their sorrow. I didn't need their guilt. They had chosen silence for years. Now, I had chosen mine. I didn't forgive them. I didn't rage against them. I simply let them go. And for the first time, that was enough. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who insist they love you the loudest. This isn't just a story about an apartment. It's about erasure, about being told you're too much or not enough, about being asked to keep the peace while your dignity slips out the door. But more than that, it's about what happens when you stop waiting for someone else to make things right. It's about painting over the damage, reclaiming the silence, and realizing your voice never needed their permission. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Tell me in the comments. And if this story found you at just the right moment, like, subscribe and hit the bell, because maybe the next story is the one you've been waiting your whole life to hear.